Hi, friends, and welcome. Welcome to this lovely session on this. Well, I don't want to say what month it is because then people in the future are like, wow, that was a long time ago. So whatever the month currently is when the month that we're doing this. Thanks for being here. We're happy you're here. And we're going to talk about creating an essay plan for the year. And yeah, let me share my slides. How about that? That's a good start. How about that? Our check-in question today. Here's just to make sure that you're in the right place. This is the slides officially. If you're here to talk about your college essay plan, good. That's what we're talking about. Our check-in question is, what's a skill or superpower you're working on or would like to work on in 2024? From the pre-chat, we have being timely, setting up routines for every day of the week. I love that. Let me see. I've got all my Zoom things are in the way. There we go. We've got taking the time to breathe, scheduling yoga, love it. Saying no to volunteering, um, organizing, marketing, being strategic, balance, love it. Here's mine. Um, a cooking competition show, but all the chef's spouses are there to somehow keep standing in front of whatever drawer cabinet they need to get into. That's me with my partner. And it's also my partner in my way when I'm trying to like clean everything because that's my job at the house. So that's the skill I'm not trying to like literally up level. I'm hoping to, like Hannah, develop like a regular just morning routine of exercising and drinking water first thing before coffee even. Feel free to share in the chat. So what are we up to today? Let's take a look. Well, first of all, if you haven't met me before, some ways that I identify are as writer and let's see, former server at Red Lobster. I actually worked there. I worked at McDonald's too back in the day. I'm an oldest sibling, but more relevant to today, I'm the college essay guy and have been for, I don't know, 10 years or so. I've been working on this for about 20 years. And I've been thinking about this a lot, and I still spend a goodly portion of my day thinking about college essays and the application process. Hannah, what about you?
Hi everyone, I'm Hannah Lim and I'm the director of workshops for College Essay Guy, but I played a lot of different roles. With Ethan in the past, I was a college essay coach. Lately, when I'm not organizing workshops for schools and organizations, I am creating content and I'm also even consulting for different schools like internationally. It's been amazing to see so many different types of applications from all over the world. And yes, that's me. I also identify as a cat mom. You'll see a black and a white cat walk around once in a while. And I am a reluctant Disney adult, and I am going to Disney right after this. So yeah, that's me.
Yeah, we are mixed. Sure, there I might have mixed feelings personally in Disney, but I'm also was on last night going like, there's a $50 ticket for kids between now and March. Like, okay. So, you'll hear Disney references throughout. Here's what we're up to today. We're going to talk about how we run our process with one-on-one students. Some of you, actually, probably most of you haven't really ever heard me talk about this. So I'm going to kind of give you our timeline and the process, big picture that we use with our students. And then I want to just hear from you all. What does your process look like for 2024? Hopefully what this is going to be is it's going to be like, oh, that's how they do it. But how do I do it? It'll be a chance for us to do a little bit of writing. And then what'll probably happen is like questions will come up. And so we're going to have a Q&A in the middle of the session. Like, what questions are coming up for you? What are the challenges that you're finding? Let's wrap. Let's have a conversation. And then Hannah's going to share some tips from Google Docs that we love. And I'm going to talk a little bit about boundary setting, which is something that I've gotten better at, but I still don't imagine that I've mastered. And then I'll tell you a little bit about our counselor training program that's coming up starting in a couple weeks. So that sounds like a plan. It sounds like we did our homework, Hannah. We like planned this out and everything. We did. So here's the preferred with an asterisk essay timeline. And preferred, if I put a little, I should have put a little asterisk at the bottom that says, but hey, things happen. But this is sort of like if it's my ideal 2024, and this is the seed I want to plant for you, is like, what does your ideal 2024 look like? Late May, early June, once students have finished APs, they're out from, finals and everything. Let's start talking about the personal statement before they're out to lunch, or out to summer plans. Let's just get in there. Let's start the gears turning. Let's do some personal statement work. And I'll talk a little bit more about this in a few minutes, but I think that giving them some meaty pre-work before you even meet with them is a good idea. One that I want to recommend and will underscore the importance of in just a little bit. But then I think June and July, and you'll know this from this is when I lead my courses, is the time for working on the Common App. And by Common App, I mean the personal statement, the activities list, the additional info. Some supplements, we don't know what are going to happen with supplements. Are they going to keep these essays on, what will you bring to campus / the diversity essay? I have a feeling that there's going to be some more, prompt updates. So I'm less excited to be like, you've got to get all your supplements done before August 1st because we don't actually know what those supplements are going to be. So as many of you know, most of the supplements come out in August. So as soon as August 1st hits, boom, let's shift and let's get those supplemental essays done for the early schools. So EDEA schools, let's try to get those done by the end of the summer. Some of you maybe are nodding, going like, yes, that's a great goal. But hey, things happen. But my goal with every student is like, let's be done with our early schools by the end of the summer so that when you walk in to fall, everybody else is starting, most, students are starting, and you're going, you know what? I think I'm pretty good. I'm feeling pretty confident. Because as we know, September, October is the busiest, heaviest course load, most leadership responsibilities in high school, et cetera, et cetera. But then, they're working on supplements for the remaining schools. I'm a big fan of getting students, while they're kind of some momentum going, getting them working, writing on those other ones and thinking about how they can reuse those essays so that by the end of October, this is the big push, right? We rebranded Sucktober to Rocktober, that students are just like crushing it. And then by the end of October, a lot of the stuff is done. Now, again, asterisk, because that's the goal. Because of course, then we got November to December to like anything that didn't get done, which is like a very bad thing to put on an essay timeline, but it's hopefully somewhat realistic. Um, and I'm curious if, and we'll have a little bit of time to write on this, but if this sort of matches up with some of y'all. So there will be time in just a few minutes where I ask you to like map out what's your version of this, and what does this do to your brain, or what problems do you tend to encounter? Okay, Hannah, will you talk a little bit about creating a calendar plan?
Yeah. And so this is going to be different for the folks who are with us earlier today. Something I didn't mention in my bio is my background is in teaching. I was a junior year English teacher, and I watched students procrastinate to the very last second to turn things in. And another philosophy of teaching that I have, and you'll hear me say this, is you can lead a horse to water, but you can't force it to drink unless you put salt in its oats. And I know that we're trying to get the students to finish before school starts. You can ask them and ask them and ask them, but unless you give them a sense of urgency and make it salty, they're not going to do it. And so I'm going to show just how to create this calendar plan with your students. So the thing is, this is a little bit different with the schools because I'm going to actually take over sharing if that's okay.
Please do it.
Yeah. Is that you're actually working with them throughout the summer. And so what you can do is to create these different events so that they feel that urgency of, oh my goodness, I'm actually running out of time. Like say, for example, you can ask them, are you really going to be working on this on Halloween night before the EAED deadline? Probably not. So here is the last day we're going to work on it. If you have kids, you're probably not going to be wanting to work on it either. And so like preemptively showing them the calendar, because as we talked about, October is very open. It is Rocktober. So trying to let them know that the urgency is coming, but also for any of you who are, in California, the UC apps are due here. I have set a boundary that I do not work with any students during Thanksgiving break. My birthday tends to be around this time, so I kind of use the birthday excuse as well, but no working with students there. And at College Essay Guide, we actually have an end of service date for students who start in the summer, which is a lot earlier. So when I would work with students when I was full-time working with students one-on-one, I would show them this. This is actually the deadline. This is not the deadline. January 1st is not the deadline, right? Because they're only thinking about that ultimate deadline. And let's say you are working with them later into it. There's winter break, there's Christmas, you could even write in Christmas and all those things there. But another way to have a little bit more urgency is also through the essay tracker. And so some of you have probably seen this already before. It's something that we have online. You can literally Google College Essay Tracker. But I want to show you an Essay Tracker 2.0 version that you can actually do and modify with the trackers that you already have. So something that I would tell students every time is we're not just working on the Common App statement, because of course you want to go to all these different schools. I want you to also write in all the prompts so that they're like, oh my goodness, this is so many prompts, right? Again, developing that sense of urgency, making it very salty for them to want to get their work done, because I'm telling you, they're so used to procrastinating. I said in the last session, they say pressure makes diamonds, when it's like true sometimes, but most of the time it's not. So I'm going to show you a way cooler, more a different type of pressure way to do this. So what's really cool is that you can actually create filters on the top row. And what I do with students is I will actually color all of these orange. If they haven't started, they're orange. If they're in process, they're yellow. If they're done, it's green. Look at the student, has so many essays. And then what we do is put them in according to priority. So these are for the early deadline, then medium, then low. Then you can actually prioritize these by date, right? So it could be low to high, high to low, whatever you want them to be. And then another thing that we try to have the students do toward the beginning is what are the topics you're going to use for all of these? Because let's say they're writing the main statement, but they know they want to write about, let's say, an extracurricular activity here. You don't want to talk about it too much in the main statement, right? So having all of their prompts in advance is ideal. They don't, sometimes, you know how they are. They'll add schools and things. So you may not have all of them, but once they see all the word limits and all of that, creating that urgency should help them be like, oh my goodness, my deadline's actually this. You probably don't even need this column here. So what you do is you basically, if you go to this upper little rectangle there, it highlights the whole thing, right? All you need to do is if you right click, if you have a Mac, it's a 2-finger click, you just go to create a filter. So now, oops, actually I'm going to, you have to remove the first line. So I'm going to delete this row and then create a filter, and then it's all here. So you can, filter them based on whatever you want it to be. And then you can color code them however way you want. I know this one is a little bit extra because it kind of matches some of the schools and everything, but it's up to you how you want to do it. But I do put in like all the schools so that they all get matched up together. So yeah, that's kind of like my tip for that. And then you can, and we're actually developing a calendar on our side to share this out as well. But getting the students used to Google Calendar and looking at this would be good too. So
Totally. Sweet. Thanks. I love watching you work and like getting into the weeds of those kinds of things. That's like super interesting to me. Will you stop sharing for just, there we go. Beautiful. So I'd love to chat a little bit about our process. How does it work? What do we do? What does it look like if you're working with CEG on essays? So, and I'm going to weave in, some folks are asking about the UCs. I want to weave in that to the conversation here because I think with the University of California schools, which a bunch of our students apply to, both us, but also like collectively our people on the call, I think it depends on the student. So here's what the process looks like, big picture. Pre-work. We have students do like 2 hours of pre-work, and you might be like, what? Students do 2 hours of pre-work? And yeah, and for some students, they're going to spend even more time on that. But it's like really specific brainstorming exercises that are geared towards getting the stuff churning, getting the stuff going, getting the stuff turning. Now, some students are like, this is a lot. We chunk it out. We've got little videos that sort of allow students to, sort of see piece by piece. And there's like work along videos where it's like, hey, here's me doing the 21 details exercise. And so we've sort of like broken those up so that it does, kind of hopefully get students into the flow state. But there's a big chunk of pre-work. It also involves, there's a questionnaire that goes out to parents that's like, here are 10 questions that we think are important. We have them do the values exercise, and we want them to get a sense of sort of like what the vibe is. We're also looking for like, what are parents' expectations through this process? And then the initial I say 1 to 3 sessions, because sometimes we have this like awesome brainstorming session and it's like, boom, we're writing. And then sometimes it's like, all right, we've got some ideas on the personal statement. So in that first session, there's some maybe personal statement ideas that are kind of started, but it really is going to take a little bit more to like crack, okay, what is a solid idea that the student feels really excited about working on? In those initial sessions, and I'm going to keep broadly just for the sake of time today, but in the initial sessions, we talk about I go personal statement first because that's what I feel like once we sort of have figured out what that is, then we're kind of off and running. And then I like to go supplemental essays after that. So for example, if a student is applying to the UCs, in a session 2, I love to be like, hey, let's talk the UCs. Let's talk about what your 4 different topics are. How are they going to show different sides of you? But I separate that from personal statement work because I find in some cases, so let me say, in some cases, I find that looking at the UCs could lead to interesting supplemental essay topics. I find it somewhat rare for not always, but somewhat rare that the personal insight questions end up turning into the personal statement topic. For some students, it works. Like there was a student that this year that I worked with, and when I looked at all of her stuff, I was like, oh, pieces of all these things. How do we find a thing that works for all these? And it worked. But this student that I'm talking about particularly wasn't applying to highly selective schools. So I think it depends on the student and it depends on their essays. And I find that for students who are applying to more selective schools, I think it's harder to do kind of like a montage of ideas or to take that essay that's probably on an extracurricular activity, if it's for the UCs, and making that a personal statement. And this comes from my own bias of like, I don't think extracurricular activities are necessarily the strongest personal statement topics, oftentimes because they end up blending in with other topics. Personal bias alert. So in those initial sessions, we're talking personal statement, maybe for session 1, session 2, let's talk about UCs. Or you're applying to Yale, let's talk about all the Yale essays. Or you're applying to Brown, let's talk about the open curriculum. And we're talking about how does it, now that we've got maybe an idea about the personal statement, how do these other essays, how is your U Chicago, Why Us gonna fit? How is your extended essay gonna show another side of you? And so we're kind of talking about these as a whole school, as a whole, application, as it were. And I think it's so worthwhile spending lots of good, juicy, delicious time in the brainstorming. And I really think the pre-work shouldn't even be called pre-work because that is actually the work, that is actually the brainstorming. So it could be argued that the brainstorming actually started, whatever, when the students started doing the pre-work, it took them a few days to get it to do it and get it done. And then the brainstorming is happening. And sometimes I'll be like, hey, can you go back and do this pre-work exercise more deeply? Like I saw that you started to do this, but I'd really love for you to dive into this identities exercise, for example. Once we sort of, the student has a sense of like, okay, we've got some different ideas. There's like specific stuff that I don't have time to get into right now on outlining and getting students to come to a solid structure that they feel like, ah, yes, I can write this. And there's like, usually specific targeted homework that we'll do around outlining and structuring. And then we'll do that usually with like the major essays, we'll call it. At some point, we've added something called topic check. So I think it's really useful for a student to be able to say to someone else, hey, here are the different essay topics that I'm considering. So at CEG, let's say they're working with one of my coaches, they'll put on a doc, here's the topic that I'm considering for my personal statement, and here are my different supplemental essays, and here's sort of like, we sometimes refer to it as like the story of my application. Like, here's the story that I'm telling, here are the different sides of me. And we have that goes to like a second review or a second set of eyes, someone to kind of look over it, who also reviews the brainstorming work and goes, oh, cool, you might also think about weaving in this, or here's some ideas. And the student and the coach go, great, awesome, thank you so much. And they're back into their work. So it's just sort of like, hey, could I explain this to someone else and get a second set of eyes? In terms of the revision process, you know how that goes. It takes somewhere between 3 and however many sessions to like, let's get all, depending on how much time the student has to and when they start, and revising, and then more revising until the student feels really great and confident. And then there comes a point in the process where we go, okay, this is starting to feel like it might be almost done. And we literally create a doc that's the almost done doc. We actually have a software that we click a button and it creates the almost done doc. And it's like, here's your main personal statement, your activities list, your additional info. We put it all into one doc. And then underneath that, the supplemental essays. And we sort of start to see, okay, this is how this thing is taking shape. and then we can sometimes see things like, oh wow, this is a huge piece that was missing. How do we work that in? Or, oh, you're sending that to this school, but that's not actually making it to this other school. And it really helps me to be able to see it all on one, thing, one doc, so that I can, point things out to students. And it also helps us to see across schools, like, okay, well, Northeastern isn't getting all of this information, because they don't have supplemental essays. So, what suggestions do we have there? And that's another time when it goes to a second person internally where they kind of look over it, make comments, make, suggestions. And we've got like sort of a team of folks that does that. And then it's back to the student to make revisions. And even though that sounds relatively simple, that takes time. And we try to have students do that within at least a week before the deadlines. We have this moment where we're like, hey, if you want reviews, please send us the thing. I think Julia's on this call is like, hey, last call for almost done docs. And then, those come in. And then, that's furious working time for almost done team for like, getting notes back to students. 2 years ago, was it maybe 3 years ago? I was the only almost done reviewer. So it was like Ethan looking at, I don't know how many, 100, students almost done docs and getting them back to people. That was a busy season, but now we've got a group of folks who do that. And then the finalizing is sort of what we do. We call it a value scan, where the student looks through and basically goes, okay, what different values are coming through in my application? What do I see? And part of that is to build confidence and to let them be able to feel like, oh yeah, lots of different parts of me are really coming through. And then also sometimes to check for redundancy, like, oh, I noticed that this value is like not only is it a major theme, but it's like it's all the way through my application. Maybe I could, there's this other side of me that was back in my brainstorming work that I might want to bring in potentially. So there's something that we do called the value scan. So I know that was kind of like the quick overview version. I'm going to talk a lot more about it in the course that I'm doing in a couple weeks, but that's sort of like the big picture process. And I'd be curious with just a little mini writing exercise, and then because I think this will bring up cool questions, is what is your timeline, your preferred process for 2024? How does that go? And if you'd be willing to, and it's sort of like this, like what's your version of this? And if you'd be willing to share in the chat, it would be kind of cool, I think, to hear from just a lot of different folks. What does your process look like? So 2-minute writing exercise. What is your preferred essay timeline for the coming year? And we'll do this potluck style so so we can kind of hear what other folks do. It's like a bunch of folks start early, February, March, springtime. That's cool. I'm curious, I'm just lobbing a question out to those folks is like, what have you found pros and cons of that? I'm kind of asking a leading question. I found that starting early, sometimes students have ideas that we end up kind of not using or throwing out. So we kind of shifted it, but I'm curious if that early brainstorming work really works for folks. Hmm. Cool. It's really neat to be able to see other folks' process. And I find it's affirming to be like, oh, you do this too. I find that to be interesting and useful. But a lot of folks start earlier, it looks like. Hmm. And then Leanne's noting that some folks, students are burnt out March, April. Okay. So here's a mini mid-session Q&A. What questions come up for you as you listen to that or as you're reading other folks' processes? What are you thinking about? Or if you like, what are the areas where you find most challenging about essay work? Urgency, says Rebecca. Yeah, keep to timelines. When we solve that, how often we meet with seniors just depends. It's a big range of students to reach. I wish I could say. Sometimes it's like when they're coming in at the last minute, it's like 5 times. And then sometimes if they've signed up early, it's 10 times or more, it just depends. Yeah, Julia, I feel you on the balancing the college list building thing. It's like smuggling that in. It's like, oh, and also you probably need to add two, two more likely schools. We do have hard stop dates. We have in the past, Beth, with which is like a November 15th, sort of like end of services date. And it's something that we're like kind of going back and forth on. Like, do we keep that? Do we, you know, because sometimes we're flexible with that. Um, but I'd be curious to hear from other folks. Do you have hard stop dates as you work when you work with students and school-based counselors who are here too? Do you have a like a this must be done? I'm not going to look at it after a certain date. Your applications must be done. And how does that work for you? I'd be curious to hear. I'd also be curious to hear from folks if you had a thing and then changed it. Yeah, procrastination. I resonate with that, Mindy. It's like I'm not sure what that session is or something. It's like that solves that. Yeah, Juliana, the part about mental health is something that I'm actively thinking about and writing about right now. It's probably going to be the next podcast series that we do in a few months on, and it's what I'm interested in. Yeah, I think we need more resources on that. So thanks for naming that. Folks are saying no hard stops here. Yay, Matchlighters. Hi, Stephanie. Yeah, there's a hard stop, November 15th and December 15th. Yeah, great. Thanks. I'm just spending time reading some of these. Okay. Hannah, will you share some Google Docs tricks? Because I think I'm excited to share these with folks. One of these, I don't know. I don't know if folks will know both of these, but go for it. I'll let you share it, screen share. Oh, you're
Yeah, for
muted.
sure.
There you
Yes.
go. Great.
Okay, so the first one it is the table of contents. And so something that I want to show here is the fact that this will actually save you, hopefully, a couple minutes in each session so that it'll allow your time with your students to go faster. So I'm gonna share my screen here and show you. So first and actually a student showed me this that I was working with. And so I started creating these for some of our workbooks and different things that we have here. So if you look over here, there's a document outline, and literally it creates a table of contents here for you. So if you're like, hey, let's go to your feelings and needs exercise, boom, it's right there. Oh, the values exercise is right there. Just save so much time. So I'm going to actually show you how to do it. And I basically made a copy of Adrian's almost done doc that was shown in the chat. And so what you do is this, because if you take a look at this outline here, there's nothing here, right? So what you do is you highlight the section you want to be in your table of contents. Then you go here where it says normal text. And then you could either, if you want apply title to match, you just apply title to match. And then you press title, and now it's there on the left, right? So let's say you want to do this one too. Go from normal text to title, additional info, same thing, right? If you want sub ones, you can go into subtitle, heading 1, blah, blah, blah. So this one, I would say all the ones that you need the most are probably just the titles here, like additional info and things. But once you start having students putting in their supplementals, like all the supplemental essays, this is going to be super helpful. So just to show you, like here is an example of a curriculum workbook that we have that's a teacher's edition. Literally, we have everything mapped out in like day 1, day 2, and it has all these like subsections and everything. It really is super duper helpful. And so the next thing I want to show you is actually something that's very cool, that this is like Ethan's favorite thing. And so I'm going to share the screen here. Let me show you the shortcut and then show you how to do it. So it's the speak to text, right? You're working with a student and you can't type fast enough. You just want to, get their dictations. And so what you do is this. First, did you know if you just go to docs.new, it'll create a brand new doc for you, right? Just like that. Super fast. Yeah. You could do sheets.new, so many things. So that's like one that I use a lot. And so what you do is you go, so this is based on if you have a PC or a Mac. So you just do Command Shift S or Control Shift S. So we'll try it here. Ethan, do you want to say something?
I will say some words, period. Here are some words, period. Here's an exclamation point. I don't know if it's actually picking me up. There we go. Kind of, sort of.
Fast, I think. Hold on. Try again.
I am trying again, period.
Yeah. So it's pretty cool, right? I don't know why it's like,
it's deleting. It's like, did you not mean to say that? We swear it works better than that. But if you have
it does. I think it's because we're on Zoom, honestly. I mean, you will be on Zoom with your students too, but there's a lot of people here. So, but it's pretty good. And so you could just, use it or not. But yeah, those are just some of the quick tips. Another one quick bonus one I'm going to show you is you probably already know Control Shift C, which is the word count one, but the display, that little tip here, doing the words, doing the character counts, such a time saver because it's just going as you type it. So just some little time savers. Some of you probably already know these, but
thanks. I mean, I used that as recently as Tuesday when I was creating YouTube video scripts because I was like, gosh, it takes forever to type something. But if I just talk it out, so I just talked it out, and then, use this feature, and it was just great. So
yeah. And so I'm going to put this into the chat, but these are all the things that it can hear when you're doing that. So
yeah, Stephanie uses it with students who are frustrated, to get things on paper. Hannah is the queen of Google Docs. I'm so glad you know, Noah. You're right. These are like highlights from a session. She did this session in our counselor community last year of like 9, Google Docs tricks. And so I was like, let's share a couple of those from last year. So anyway, let's talk about boundaries, shall we? And we can even, we can stop sharing because I'm gonna reference sort of like a Google Doc that I have, Hannah, and also I'm just gonna riff a little bit before we get to Q&A here in a few minutes. So let me just bring up my reference, my Google Doc reference. So I want to focus, there are a lot of things that we could say about setting boundaries. And There's a whole separate hour-long session that we're going to do later this year on this. But I'd love to just focus on phone boundaries. And a couple of you have probably heard me talk about this, but maybe not a lot of you. And I want to share 5 phone boundaries that have changed my life. And here they are. So the first one, and because I feel like I've gotten to a point, and I wouldn't have said this even like, a year and a half ago, but I got to a point where I kind of have like handled, like I have good relationship to my phone. Actually, I'm going to make it six. I'm going to do 5 phone boundaries and then 1 resource that has positively impacted my life. So the first one is charging my cell phone in another room at night when I sleep. Can I get an amen? I used to like, sleep with it right next to me and it was my alarm and stuff. And then I just got a separate alarm. And now I don't have it as the first thing that I check when I get up in the morning. And boy, is that a difference maker. So when I wake up in the morning, there's my wife, my lovely wife. It used to be that I would reach, and then for a while when I stopped doing it, I was like, where's my phone? But instead, I put water. Then it's like, oh, great. Yeah, then that's the low lift thing that I can do that's right in front of me. So, number one, I stopped sleeping with my phone right next to me. I realize that's not possible for everyone, safety issues, etc. But this kept me, especially from the endless doom scrolling at midnight. And when we were looking for our house, the endless Zillowing that happened. Um, so the second thing I did, and this was edgier for me, but it was taking work email off my phone, and meaning that like I don't have like a Gmail app on my phone, even though I use Gmail, or I don't have and this is for work particularly, because I do my personal email, I do have access to because I'll check that sometimes when I'm like going to pick up my daughter. But the only way for me to access my work email is I have to go into my Safari browser and then log into Gmail, because then if I need to check something because it's like urgent, then I just log out and I make it awkward for myself to get back into it. What this has saved me doing is when I'm just like the sort of classic waiting in line at the post office, that I'm not going into work mode, because what that does is it sort of starts to take up my brain, and suddenly I'm no longer present in whatever other thing that I was going to be in. And what I realized was that essentially when I was allowing folks into my brain space when I didn't want to be there, there were, what is it? You're getting, free rent taking up free rent in my brain. And I would be like, at dinner or something, and I would be like, I'll just check my email. And I would check it, and suddenly a thing came through, and I was like, I can't try as I might, I can't be present with you right now because I need to handle this thing. So by taking work email off my phone, it helped a lot. Some of you are listening and you're like, you're not even listening because you're like, yeah, Ethan, sorry, I'm just never going to do that, which is fine. Another one was I decided I don't want to check work email on Sundays. And some of you also might be like, sorry, just not going to do that. But that changed my life too. And I was just like, this is going to be family day. And I wrote in my Google Calendar, blocking out for family time, and stopped taking sessions with students on Sundays. My wife thanked me, not as much as I would have liked, to be honest. I would have liked her to be like, this is you've changed, this is exactly what we wanted as a family. But she was more like, a little bit more like, great, yes, this is what you should do. But essentially like blocking out Sundays. And then I took half of Saturdays back, and I like would only meet with students like in the mornings. And now I'm proud to say, I haven't said this publicly, but I'm proud to say like I'm a fully don't work on weekends person. So if I work with students, it's, usually in the evenings during the week. For some of you, again, you're like, sorry, can't do that. Got to work with students, on weekends. But I took work, I stopped checking my work email on Sundays altogether. And then the other thing that I don't do, and this was kind of an early one, is that I just decided to not to text with colleagues and with work folks. And again, you might be like, sorry, that's how I communicate with my kids. I don't know how I'd communicate with them otherwise. But for me, that's a boundary that I just like. An exception would be like if Hannah and I are going to like gather for a co-working day or something, when it's like, hey, see you soon. But if it's like, if it's a work thing, it's Slack, it's an email, it's like whenever Hannah wants to, engage with that, because I know that, if it's a text, it's like it's getting into her crawl space when she may not want to be thinking about, me and the stuff, the work that we do. So I don't text with colleagues. I mean, very rarely. Again, only with certain exceptions. And then another big one, and this could be a whole separate session, is like I've social media apps. Like I took Facebook off my phone, then I put it back on, and then I took it off again, and then I put it back on. And then I've fully kept it off for I don't know, more than a year now. So if I have to log into Facebook, I have to like go into my browser and log in and do the two-step verification. I just make it really hard for myself to access these. So I don't have Instagram and all these things. If I've looked at Instagram, I'll like download it and then look at something and then I'll like delete it. But if my brothers send me like awesome reels on Instagram, I'm like, sorry, can't view it. Sorry, don't have Instagram. So that was a big one. And that for some of you is like, sorry, just not going to do that. I'm not saying you should do all these. These are just five that have really changed my life and my relationship to my phone. The resource that I'll share, there's an amazing, and I'll send you the follow up with this, but there's an awesome 30-day breakup with your phone plan. And it's a woman named Catherine Price. I'm just gonna like, there it is. It's the 30-day breakup with your phone challenge. You can Google 30-day phone breakup course. And I did this like, I want to say a few months ago. I'll just screen share this for a second. And what it does is it, perhaps ironically, sends you a set of texts and it's like one per day. And it starts with, and I think it's really inexpensive. I think it's like 20 bucks or something, 30 bucks. But what it did is it had me taking stock of how much time I was spending on my phone and then just slowly, little by little, becoming more conscientious and aware. And I fully, and there's like this thing on my phone now that if you look at it, and let me show you this. Um, let's see here. So this was based on this challenge. It's telling me that my AirPods are moving with me. Thanks. Okay, here. So here's what this did for me is I've got this screen that says what for, why now, what else? So it's a question for me when I pick up my phone. What am I picking up my phone for? Why am I picking up my phone right now? And what else could I be doing right now? And that's been a constant reminder for me since I did this challenge. So I've tried to make my phone less and less interesting, less and less addictive, less and less attractive. And that has in turn changed my relationship with folks I work with, with students, etc. So anyway, curious to hear, because I feel a little vulnerable having said all that, I don't know why, but I'm curious to hear just impact shares in the chat on anything that I just said about phone boundaries. And pausing for 10 seconds for folks to share. I feel nervous for some reason. I don't know why. Hannah, what do you think about any of that?
It's important. I think it's important. I think for me, I do need to go on that challenge, but I do have my phone automatically set to do not disturb at certain times of the day.
That's
So
nice.
at like 9:30, yeah, the texts don't come through and all that stuff. So it helps me wind down. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, again, there's more that can be said about boundaries. Thanks for some of what y'all are sharing in the chat. I'm going to look at it in a few minutes. But let me share with you just a couple minutes on what I'm really excited about. We're launched our counselor training program, and I want to just give me like 90 seconds to walk you through it and tell you what's in it. I'd love to see some of y'all in it. It starts in 2 weeks. Here's what the deal is, and then we'll go into Q&A. Look at this lovely picture of our team. So this is like such a YouTube shot for it. So essentially, part of what this is it's my sort of like overarching umbrella for sharing new content, creating more community and connection, getting an opportunity for us to problem solve with one another, and talking about what's the latest in college admission. So a lot of the stuff that we're still going to be doing some webinars here and there this year, but a lot of it is going to happen, the conversation is going to happen inside the community. So the way it works is it starts off with essentially my two main courses for the personal statement. And by the way, if you're like, I can't join for the whole program, but I'm interested in just taking the personal statement course, you can do that separately too. So the personal statement course is 4 weeks. It again starts February 8th. You go through all the things, brainstorming, structuring, revising. And some of the stuff that I was doing, like the quick overview of, is what I get into like depth on. We go through revision. We talk about particular essay issues. Here's the thing that I always have trouble with. Let's get in and like talk about it. Oftentimes, well, I don't know if it's good or bad, but those 90-minute sessions turn into like, you know what, let's just hang out for an extra, I don't know, half hour. And we've got a foundational track for folks who are newer, and then we've got an advanced track. And I was really excited that folks joined for the advanced track last year because we had sort of like a plan to talk about, let's talk about AI, and then the conversation would drift into like, what does it mean to, what's a student's voice? Like, what does that actually look like? And what are some practical ways that students can actually like manifest it in their writing? So that's in February. And then in March, we shift to talking about the application and supplemental essays. So it's strategizing the whole application throughout. And like I should say, like in continuing, we've got a community. And inside the community, we've got monthly sessions that go on everything from like Hannah's 9 Google Docs tips to how to, the art of setting boundaries. The art of no, I think, is the one that Sage is giving this year. And then a big part of it is going to be, I'm going to be doing basically from August onwards, I'm going to do regular sessions that are just focused on essay feedback. And the way that we've done this past year was like having folks come in with essays and we kind of go in and like, figure out, okay, well, how do we sort of strategize? And out of that came a working group. Some folks formed and they're like, hey, we'd love to meet more regularly just with other counselors and talk about essays and share different essay drafts. So that was fun that came out of that. We've got, that's this, troubleshooting sessions. We've got bunches and bunches of workshops, and I've got like probably like, 75% of them planned, but there will always come up, new interesting ideas. Sydney McDonald's coming back to talk about transitioning to private college counseling, if that's something that you're interested in. So anyway, the long and the short of it. And I think we've got a thing where if you sign up with a friend, there's 20% off. So I'll put all that, and you can check that out later. If you've got questions, you can let me know or you can email us. So let's start Q&A. We got a nice healthy 10 minutes for this, which is great. So what's coming up for you, and what do you find to be most challenging about the process? Throw some stuff into the chat. Email management, say more. I wish I could figure that
Ethan's
one.
a pro at this, though.
At email?
Yeah, your inbox is at you aim to be at 0.
I mean, right now it's at 32,
Okay,
but
that sounds so good. You don't
that's
want
pretty good. Thanks. I feel seen. I'll tell you what's helped me with email management is is Superhuman, which is $30 a month, but that really helped me get down to inbox zero. That's a program that costs $30 a month that I heartily recommend. Although I did get a notice from them that, let me show you this. Oh my gosh, this is like, I don't know that I was happy to see this, but here's my, I do have some thoughts on email management now these days. Look at this. This is what they said. Congratulations, you've cleared 62,500 conversations. Nice job. Clear 2,500 more to reach your next goal.
Oh my
That
goodness.
is not what I want to have on my tombstone. It's like, look at my achievement. Look how many conversations I cleared. I want to have fewer emails coming in, and I haven't figured that out. But um, I will say that like I think for a long time I was using email for a to-do list, and having a separate to-do list that's simple and that works really helped me do that. Um, but yeah, gosh, that's making me think I'm kind of wanting to like do a separate like maybe YouTube video on like email management because it is something that I've spent a lot of time thinking about.
There's some really good questions in the chat.
All right, lob one or answer one. What do you
This
got?
one, I actually don't know the answer to this one. It's specifically about the community.
Yeah, go.
Claire says, so I did your counselor training program last year. Do I need to sign up again? Will I still have access to the material from last year? For example, will I no longer be a member of the community? How will this year differ?
That's a great question, Clara. Yes. So in terms of, oh, and then Greg and Lori and Phil are like, yep, me too. Okay. So what we'll probably do is, folks won't, unless you like take the thing again, you won't have access to like the courses that we've done in particular. But what we'll do is we're going to send an email out probably within the next week or so to folks who are in and who want to just stay and continue to be part of the community. So stay tuned for that. Essentially, it'll give you a sense of like, here's what it's like. And it's a relatively low like monthly cost. And essentially you'll have access to the those sessions. And that's particularly for folks who already took the counselor training program. So that's not available for like anybody can join the community. To join the community right now, you have to take the counselor training program. But you folks who are already in it, there's sort of like the monthly ongoing thing. Let's see. Yes, Juliana, shout out to Cal Newport and deep work. I have blocks in my calendar that say deep work, and he has great stuff on email and work management. Mm, 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 mm. Let's see. Setting up a newsletter. Oh, So here's what I'd say. Like, if you're working on your own, I think having an email, this is like marketing advice, I suppose, but I don't know. And I think that, yeah, so if you're working on your own, setting up an email capture where you're sort of like collecting emails is do this yesterday. Um, don't, it doesn't matter which platform it is, I think. I mean, so we used to use like very early on, we used MailChimp, and then we moved to ConvertKit, and then we moved to ActiveCampaign, and now we're moving to HubSpot. So the reason we're moving to HubSpot is that HubSpot syncs with a whole lot of different things. But just pick one. I mean, it's really just you need something to send out to track, how many people are on your email list and who's opening what. Ideally, you have something that allows you to A/B test. So you have two different subjects and you kind of go, which one are people opening? And then, okay, let's send the one that people are opening. But yeah, we've often thought about doing just like a separate marketing course, but have something interesting on your website that people will sign up for, and that's very useful, and that gives away great free content. And I think you almost can't give away too much in those opt-ins. On the College Essay Guy website, at peak season, we'll have 200 or 300 people fill out the thing a day. Like, so that's strong recommend. What is your opinion on reflecting on race in statements? Great question, Teresa. I've got a whole set of resources on this. Let me just walk through it real quick. So here we go. So when the decision was released, we started getting to work on resources. And some of the resources we have is like one particular, like, is it okay to write about race in your college application? And the short answer is yes. And the Supreme Court in the syllabus of the decision says just it needs to be connected. In order for it to be considered in the application process, it needs to be connected to specific qualities of character. And so this walks through an application by a student who did decide to write about race and how that student connected to the qualities of character and how it turned out, for that student in their process. There's also a really practical exercise, in my view, on helping students think about their many identities, and that's linked here. By the way, this is just collegeessayguy.com/SCOTUS. And this is a great way to get students thinking about and writing about their identities. So I strongly recommend that one. And inside that one is the social identities. When it comes to those supplemental essays, the diversity supplemental essays, we'll call like broadly speaking, which is anything ranging from, hey, here are many identities, write about one of these if any of these resonate with you, or what's something that you're going to bring to the college campus. We basically, I kind of tackle the top prompts. And then on this blog article, we did an analysis of all of the supplemental essays that I think probably for like 150 schools. And we looked at what percentage changed their prompts and what they changed them to. And there's a spreadsheet that shows you and what the most popular changes were. There's a podcast episode that I did with Jay Rosner on what do the changes mean. And then there's podcasts on what do Latinx families need to know as they're preparing for college. We did that in Spanish and English. Why students don't have to write about trauma in their essay to stand out. That's with Tina Young. And there's a podcast and a blog article with some practical advice. And then another thing that I think counselors can do is up-leveling their school profile, because if students aren't able to check the box for a particular race, having that context from the high school side of like, here's our demographics, here are the students that we serve, can be really helpful. And so that's a session, and there was a webinar that we did that Tom Campbell and our team did on that. So all of these you'll find on the website. So that's my my short/long answer to your question. Let's see. Oh, I love the chat happening. Oh, great. It's a College Planner Pro chat. Cool. What is your nutshell perspective on AI in the CEG process? Hi, Amy. It's good to see you. So, I think there's still a lot of us we're waiting to see like what is AI going to do and how is it going to change things? And I'll say like there's like sort of like I can sort of make guesses about the larger thing, and then I can talk to you about my personal. So I'll start with my personal. I think first of all, AI is like super interesting and super cool, and I found it to be useful for coming up with ideas on like my own stuff. Like when I'm trying to think of like, new YouTube video ideas, I've used it in that context. As it relates to essay stuff, we're not touching it in terms of like incorporating it into our process or anything like that, because in short, I just kind of think it's too early. And I'm kind of waiting to see what are colleges saying about it. We have some sense of what some schools are saying about it, but I still think it's pretty early. And I feel reticent to sort of meme either in our counselor community or with students like, hey, you should definitely go and embrace AI as it comes to writing, because I think it's still a little bit, the verdict is a little bit out. Is it useful for brainstorming ideas? Yes. Is it useful for, suggesting revisions? Yes. Is it useful for writing? I mean, in some cases, but I think that we've got to put really, clear and strong parameters on that. There will be a session coming up later in the year where it's called, I'm calling it either, depending on 5 or 10 ethical uses of AI in the college essay process. But I still feel nervous because I'm like, I don't want necessarily to students to feel like, oh, college essay guy is saying it's okay to use AI. I think it's really important that we message this with students and figure out what are our own boundaries and what are the ways that are okay for us as counselors, and have it be sort of, responsive to what colleges are, saying. Because I think some colleges are like, yes, use it. In fact, here's an essay prompt where you and tell us how you used it or how you would prompt it. And I think some colleges are sort of like, don't use it, and we will, you'll get in trouble if you do. In fact, I've heard just a few stories about students getting flagged for plagiarism because stuff came up in AI, trackers. But I think largely in having conversations with a lot of college reps over the last year and a half, I think a lot of them aren't thinking about it. I mean, as recently as like, some of the conferences last year, like the IECA conference last year, I went around and asked a lot of people, what are they thinking about AI? And they're just like, we're not thinking about it. So that's been my sense so far. Open and curious to hear what other folks' sense is. And that was sort of like my montage of like AI thoughts, but I'd be curious to hear in the chat from other folks. Yeah, the ethics of it feels huge. And we're not using it in AI in the essay review process, but curious to hear from folks who potentially are. Um, let's see. Gosh, a big thread on College Planner Pro. Cool. Folks are heading to other meetings. Let's see. Ba-dum-bum-bum. We'll make sure to clarify with everybody, folks who took the counselor training program last year.
There was a question about the parent questionnaire. If you could explain that a little bit for the pre-work.
Sure. What was the question about it? Was like what?
I think when you were going through the process, you
Yeah.
mentioned,
So
yeah.
it's 10 questions that we found to be useful. And I'll say the three purposes of this, like the parent questionnaire is number one, I want to get their input on the whatever they think needs saying. Like I want parents to feel like they've had their say, because I think without that, parents sometimes feel like, hey, I'd love to have some input. And so I want parents to feel heard and feel like, yes, we've got your ideas. Put all your ideas here, the things that you want to say, the things you think they should write about, put that in there. And so it's sort of like to create that initial thing. The second thing is sometimes parents say some really cool, interesting, smart stuff that we don't hear about from students until whatever it is. You've had this, right? 2 or 3 months in, you're like, what? Why didn't you tell me that? So sometimes in that initial parent questionnaire, they're going to say some things and have some really good ideas and some input. So that's the second reason to do it. And the third reason I think to do the parent questionnaire is to give them a sense of what the student's process is going to be like, because this isn't a collaborative process of essay writing where it's like, okay, what does the parent think? Where we're going to be, getting input from them. We're going to basically be like, all right, here's what it's kind of like. Here's the values exercise. Here's some little exercise so you can kind of get a taste of it. And then it's like, what's your input? All right, bye. We're gonna work with the student now. And so essentially those are sort of the three uses of it. So I would say in terms of crafting your own, parent questionnaire, what are those essays? What are those questions that are one, going to help parents feel like they had their say? Two, give them some sense of like what it's like to work. And then three, I'm doing them out of order. Three, like to yield some actually interesting stuff that could be really useful, stuff that students might not share until way later in the process. All right, we're over time, so let's call it there. Thanks, Hannah, for being my co-pilot on this little journey, and we'll see you all real soon. We'll follow up with all the links and things, and hope you have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your week.